He's been living here for about 6 years. Welcome, Ian.
Thank you all. You were all sharing. I would like to share a little thing. Next week I leave to go back to Ireland, where I was born. I went back for 2 weeks for my mother's 94th birthday. So how many people in the room, can I just ask, are involved in any way with the development industry, building things and construction and permits? And so, thank you. That's helpful, because this is going to be a little bit technical, but it really doesn't make any sense if you don't understand that Washington State has the most complicated set of environmental and development regulations in the country, because everything just sort of piles on top of everything else. You have some basic comprehensive planning, you have zoning, you have environmental review, you have shoreline jurisdiction, you have wetland jurisdiction, you have steep slopes, and it's cumulative. It's not just sort of one set of regulations, it's all of these things. And so the question is, when you have a city like Tacoma that really wants to redevelop and revitalize its downtown, how can you help accelerate some of those activities and not take 2 years to get a pretty simple permit? So to jump to the conclusion, those of you who've seen the construction going on Market Street with UW, that their new Y recreation building, they basically saved 6 months' time and about at least $60,000 in permit fees by using our new process. And so trying to accelerate things dramatically. They went straight to get their building permit because we had pre-approved all their other activities. And so for most projects, you end up doing traffic studies. Even if there was one across the street, you do another one. I mean, it can be pretty difficult. There is a way out of this under state law. It's called upfront SEPA review. SEPA stands for the Washington State Environmental Policy Act. And so this is a presentation I gave to some planners a little while ago, because it's gotten some attention around the state, and so I'm basically reusing it. So non-project means you look at the whole area. You don't just look at a particular project. You don't just look at the Y building. You look at the whole area of downtown. So in our case here, you recognize the map on the right. We basically took the Dome area, the UWT campus area, the Brewery District. We have got some great buildings in the Brewery District that many of you know were just, the area was so distressed, nobody even bothered to tear them down. They're still there. Lots of communities have lost those buildings. We have them. There are lots of things happening. So regionally, we're part of a 4-county region, Kitsap, Snohomish, King, and Pierce counties. Over the next 20 years, the forecast is about 1 million more people will move into this area. So we'll go from 3.5 to 4.5 million. The recession slowed things down a little bit, but for those who follow these things, I'm told there's, Amazon currently has 4,000 job openings with South Lake Union. So there's a lot of activity. But the regional vision is all about decentralizing the growth. So everyone's not trying every day to get up to Bellevue, to get up to Seattle, to get up to Redmond. How do we decentralize some of this? And part of this activity is to try to refocus development in Everett, in Tacoma, so we get additional investment in our existing downtown areas where we have existing transit. I mean, down at the Dome, you've got inter-county bus, you've got Link, you've got commuter rail, and for those who follow it, pretty soon we'll have the Amtrak station there as well with extra service to all points. So in order to avoid doing project by project review, you need to look at your entire area, and that's the boundary on the map. And where did we go back a second? So you look at the entire boundary, try to do an assessment of what's happening in that area. What are the implications? What new utilities do you need? What new infrastructure is needed? What about transportation improvements? How do you do all that? Well, so just to give you a little background, I mean, one of the biggest drivers right now in the downtown area is UWT. We have 4,000 students right now, 900 staff, growing to 14,000 over the next 15 or so years. Not the sort of dramatic growth that South Lake Union is getting, but you know, a new building every year or two, and so that's going to be a huge driver for our downtown. Part of this project, and you saw the UW logo maybe on the front slide, is we did this project jointly with UWT, because what we've basically done is at the end of this project with City Council action is pre-approve their next 20 years of building without any further project-by-project review. So they need to meet the city requirements on a campus-wide basis, not on a building-by-building basis, and they're pretty thrilled about that. They'd like to do it on some of the other campuses. So this is the regional growth center I was referring to, and as part of this regional vision of how do we accommodate growth in a responsible way, the city's target is to plan for 60,000 new jobs and 70,000 new people coming to town. Now that's very different from our current growth rate, which is fractionally over 1%. I mean, you know this, you live here, the growth has all been going out. I'm a land use planner, I'm sort of committed to density and not sprawl, but Pierce County has done an excellent job of sprawling most of the way to Mount Rainier. Those of us in the planning profession, with the Growth Management Act passing in '91, have been trying to focus more on, so you don't need 3 cars, you don't need to live out in the back of beyond, you can live somewhere and use transit and afford more housing. So lots of good equity thinking behind this. For that sort of number of people and jobs, we have to plan for that. Some of the forecasts, though, from the regional forecasts are pretty close to that number of jobs, but population-wise, the forecast is more like 30,000 people. But we're required to plan for more, try and make some efforts to change the trends. We see most of the tremendous capacity downtown to accommodate most of that growth downtown. So we're not talking about needing to increase the density of our lower density neighborhoods. In fact, a large part of our comprehensive plan is about maintaining character and not doing that. But there's all sorts of room downtown. I mean, the downtown zoning height is 400 feet. The zoning and height in this area is, most places average about 100 feet. So the standard construction, wood frame, 5 over 2 is what we talk about, 2 stories of parking, and then frame structure. So we need to do that planning. I won't go into this very much, but we basically are part of this regional effort. It's also part of a national effort to be much more sustainable, have people living and working, and maybe recreation and worshiping in the same sort of area, not having housing in Bonnie Lake and jobs in Tacoma and going over to Gig Harbor for recreation. I mean, trying to get, and I think that we all have visited communities or cities that have done a really good job of this. And so we're part of this regional effort. For those of you who follow these things, there is funding associated with this. So basically, with your federal gas tax dollars, there becomes a competition every couple of years as to what projects got funded. For those of you who follow the Prairie Line Trail, we just got a $2 million grant to take that trail from UWT, who's doing their section, and bring it all the way down to the Theophos. We rated #1 in the region for that funding because we're trying to revitalize our downtime and attract more growth and do it in a responsible way. So this really just highlights the fact that in the regional strategy, our role in the regional strategy is to stimulate demand, to get more growth happening in downtown Tacoma, rather than further sprawl out into the hinterlands. We got a major $500,000. Well, there's a little story behind this. Most of the time, whenever there's funding available, it always seems to end up in King County. So this was a 4-county project. I was new at the time, and they set me up to these meetings, and I was the only person who wasn't from King County at the meeting, and so I just kept going to these meetings, and they kept waiting for me to do the meeting. I didn't, and so they said, well, we'll give Tacoma $500,000 of our $5 million grant to do your downtown plan. So it's that old adage about showing up, because I keep having to remind them that it is a region, and we are part of things. And again, you can just read the slide, but this is more of a, so when the Tacoma Housing Authority is competing for funds for additional activity, or new units, the fact that they're part of this planning effort and there's transit involved, and there's educational links, makes their projects much more competitive. And we have quite a story to tell in Tacoma. I went to law school here back when the law school was in the Russell building, and things have certainly changed in 20 years, so all for the better. So we talked about size downtown, where we're doing this pre-approval of projects and basically cutting at least a year out of the permit time for any big projects. We've done a similar effort now for the Hilltop area, MLK area, and that should be finished in a couple of months. And by fall, we'll be doing North Downtown. We're doing a lot of work with Sound Transit on the link extension, which will now go up. You see the link line there, will now go up to Stadium, Multi-Care, down MLK, and connect to St. Joseph's. So those who follow these things, that project's a $150 million project. The Sound Transit is putting in $50 million. The city's basically going to use most of the next 10 years of grant funding for our share. We need to compete nationally for the other $50 million. It's called Small Starts Program. I think small to me, about 50 million, but that's, in terms of big transportation projects, that's the way they go. So what we do is we need the narrative, we need to set the stage. Why should we be funded? Why is this link more important than something in Atlanta or New York or somewhere else? And part of this is showing how we connect all these pieces together. We've done lots of previous studies. Many of you may be involved in some of these, both for the Dome and UWT. What we did is take those studies and actually put them into a planning document. So this sub-area plan and environmental impact statement basically takes one look. Took us 2.5 years to do it, and we had hundreds and hundreds of people involved, but we basically looked at accommodating 30 million square feet of new development in downtown Tacoma. We looked at all the implications for historic preservation, archaeology, traffic, and revised our regulations so that we would be prepared for that. We've been working with all of our, again, most of the sewers downtown are 100 years old. They need to be rebuilt. And the question is, rather than tearing up the street time and time again, coordinating that with water, getting the fiber underground, and then working with the property owners to hopefully rebuild a complete street. So we really do see the most benefit out of each of those infrastructure projects. We talked about the Prairie Line Trail a little bit, and obviously delighted about the fact that Metro Parks will have more resources to bring to the table. Trying to prioritize investments. We have very strong policies about trying to be more pedestrian friendly, more bike friendly, and so we prioritized a whole series of projects. The most fundamental thing is that we need to do this downtown planning to continue to qualify for things like the Small Starts program, for the lake extension, for Prairie Line Trail, for anything we really want to do on a competitive basis. And funding becomes scarcer and scarcer, the competition becomes tougher. So we're basically doing the planning. For those of you who follow these things, we're showing our work, we've done the work, we've had the public meetings, we're not asking for funding that's something that hasn't been vetted, something that's going to be controversial. We've done all that work up front. We're working with our utilities so basically we've got 6-year plans for water and sewer, but if a developer comes in and wants to redo a particular block or half block, we will adjust our plans to give that project priority over others. And then the bottom bullet is a large part of what this project is about, which is to say when UW is looking at putting a new science building in, and it takes 3 years to site it on the Seattle campus, and they can do it in Tacoma in 3 months, that maybe gives a little advantage. Why don't we just put it in Tacoma? And so the same thing up in Seattle. 2-year review times, we can do that in 3 or 4 months. We've worked all the details out with the State Department of Transportation, so we don't have to do a 6-month consultation with them. Basically, we're going to do monitoring, we're going to do sort of monitor and then catch up, monitor and catch up, rather than pretending we have a problem and taking 6 months to decide we don't. The most controversial part of this is that, and I don't know if many of you are familiar with this, but the State Environmental Policy Act has been around for about 40 years, and everyone seems to know it's there. And so it used to be used for more environmental issues like protecting wetlands and some other things. But over the last 15 years, it's really become a vehicle for people to challenge projects on social grounds, on economic grounds, on I don't like it because it's non-union, I like it, don't like it because it's union. I mean, it's too big, it blocks my view. All of the things that that are perhaps peripheral to the discussion. So the first thing we had to do is reach out to people and say, in this south downtown plan, once we finish it, there won't be appeals on individual projects under SEPA anymore. You can still challenge it under Land Use Petition Act and go to Superior Court, but you're not going to be able to tie it up, hopefully, for 2 or 3 years because you don't like it. And so a lot of people had some concerns about that, quite rightly. We basically persuaded them, and then the Planning Commission and the Council, that it was well worth that to try and accelerate some redevelopment in downtown. So pretty standard planning process, identifying goals, and ending up with an approved plan. This is really just a technical piece for those who are interested. It's brand new because up till 2 years, almost 2 years ago, when you did a planned area-wide action, someone could still challenge it and say, well, the original plan wasn't good enough, that your project's different. Under this new transit infill review, if you meet the regulations, you get your building permit. And so it really is expedited review. These are some of the points I've made already. It's not subject to appeal at the project level, working with UWT, and then nothing, and then obviously the bottom line is streamlined review process. This is more the technical pieces of how much review and outreach we had to do. In order to even start this process, we had to have multiple community meetings and explain the process and explain to people that this was the time to raise their issues, not later. Oops. And so I mentioned this already. We've got a series of catalyst projects we're working on in downtown. The UWT master plan has been approved. The State Department of Transportation for the Amtrak station originally said, oh, I don't know if you're familiar, but the passenger line by 2017 is going to go down through Lakewood. You won't be taking Amtrak along the shoreline anymore because all the conflicts with freight traffic and delays. And so a lot of attention's been said, well, you're spending a lot of money to save 10 minutes to get from Seattle to Portland, but that's really not the issue. The issue is you're going to be, it's reliability. So if someone has a business meeting, they know they will be there on time. And that's not currently the case. And so they will be moving passengers by 2017 onto the line that goes through Lakewood and adding, I think, 4 more trains a day to Portland. What goes with that is that they need to move the station because the station's on the old line and on Puyallup, so they're going to move it up to Freight House Square. When we started this exercise, when they first came in, the State Department of Transportation said, oh, by the way, we're going to close C and D streets while the train's in the planes at the platform, which didn't go over too well with Brian Haley or just about anyone else. And of course, any of you who dealt with the state knows the state feels they can do whatever they want. But the beauty of this was we were able to put this plan in front of them and say, that's not our vision for the future, you can't do that. And there actually are requirements that are placed on the state that they have to comply with some of our local provisions. And so they're basically, the trestle that comes into the station, Freight House Square, is going to be rebuilt by 2017. because of this is part of a bigger strategy. And they're actually going to put the new platform on the trestle and not go across C and D streets. So that's the sort of benefit we get from doing this area-wide planning. We get to push back to outside agencies and force them nicely to respect our local positions. A lot of more redevelopment happening around the Dome area. Pretty amazing when you have the most transit-rich area maybe in the Northwest, and you have 4 people living there, rather than 4,000 people living there. So right now there's an initiative, Pierce Transit owns a building that's directly, right next to the parking garage towards Pacific Avenue. They've got a block there that was originally thought of for a new garage. They're doing a pilot project right now to hopefully get some market rate housing on that site. They're going out with RFPs in the near future. So maybe put 150 units there adjacent to transit. So our thought long term is there's room for hundreds of units down there. We're again competing regionally for funds to completely redo Puyallup Avenue, so it isn't that wasteland of asphalt, and actually have a boulevard, much as they've done with 99 further north as you go through SeaTac and up through Shoreline. That's the sort of vision that we have for Puyallup Avenue. Part of our pitch for why we should be funded rather than someone else is we have this vision of accommodating the regional growth, regional vision, and making things more affordable in a transit setting. A number of new projects on the horizon right now. The Henry's under construction on the Theophilus. There's at least 3 proposals for new multifamily housing up on, or condominiums or apartments up on in the stadium area. 3 or 4 projects in the brewery district that are in the pipeline as far as redeveloping. Part of that long-term thinking of tying in with the UWT expansion. So again, I'm just repeating it because I'm so pleased. The UWT campus master plan. They actually had me come up to the UW campus and present to the campus architect and all these important people, because it really does take years to do anything up there because they've got all this encroachment issues with the neighborhood. And so we don't have that. Again, we're pretty excited to be able to do that. I talked about this already. The Point Defiance Bypass is the name for the project. They'll be adding runs. We basically use this planning effort as a way to jumpstart our planning, get some folks involved, and get a different outcome. Because this planned action is really about implementation. It's not about policies that just sit on the shelf. I mentioned this. This is just some graphics of the Pierce Transit site, just showing the potential there. We think if we can, before the recession hit, there were 2 projects, housing projects proposed, market rate projects proposed for the area. They went on hold. Now we're starting to get some pickup in interest. But we just think there's tremendous potential in that south part of downtown, particularly with the link connection to downtown. That just shows the site I was talking about. And this is the Prairie Line Trail project. Right now, you can see from the map, the UWT campus. By the end of the year, they will have a bike, pedestrian, open space boulevard going right through the middle of their campus, what the planning folks call an urban linear park. And so they'll have that all the way through their campus. What the city got grant funding for was to come right by this building, in fact, and go right down to connect with the existing overpass over the railroad tracks and get down to the Theophilus. Not many people recognize it, but the Theophilus cleanup is probably one of the most successful Superfund projects in the country, to take something that degraded, end up cleaning things up, not just temporarily, but permanently in terms of stormwater improvements, and then to have people coming back and living there. Tremendous national accomplishment that gets recognition that I don't think we give ourselves enough credit for. So that will tie the downtown to in a more exciting way to the waterfront. This is the design concept for the Prairie Line Trail. And you will see this by the end of the year as you go through the UWT campus. This is the schematics for those who haven't seen it for the Henry down on the Theophos, currently under construction. It's the same development group that did the Esplanade and the Theophos buildings. This is just getting close to my closing remarks, so I hope you have some good questions or even bad questions. And this is our sub-area. We basically pre-approved development. So for those of you who have contacts, please encourage them to think about this area. We are getting more interest. I think at some point, when you have rents of $2,500 in Seattle and rents of $1,000 in Tacoma, there's a tipping point that I think people go, this really is a more exciting place to live and have more disposable income. And so that's my thank you, and I'd be most happy to answer any questions. I told you I'd have time.
Questions?
Sir, then, ma'am.
Yeah. My wife used to work in the city plan.